Welcome to another episode of Mr. Therapist and the Counselor Podcast. We are your guide towards personal recovery, whether you're dealing with an addiction, a mental health issue, or you're just trying to figure out stuff in life. We empower your growth through authentic conversations and demystifying the process of therapy. So come on in, enjoy the show. I'm Manny Romero. Jesse O.
This week on Time Sessions, we process Weaponizing Therapy Talk.
Weaponizing Therapy Talk. Make sure you subscribe to the show and share the show if you find value. Let's go. All right.
Time Sessions, here we go. We're on the clock.
Here we go.
It's been a while since we've done this.
Yes.
It seems like it's only been like
It seems like
a day or an hour.
The same hour.
Just different shirts. Time Sessions, again, the point behind this is whenever you go to therapy, you sit down, you have your time, you have your opportunity to process experiences. So recently you came to me and you wanted to talk to me about, was an article you found, right? About Jonah Hill. You want to talk about a little bit? This is something that came out recently.
So I found a little bit. I found like the tip of the iceberg of the article, and then you dove in a little bit more. But so there was this article. I guess first let me start off this. This is why it's important to talk about, I think, because I think there is talk around relationships and what's healthy, what's not healthy. So that's why I brought this up. But like, this is a healthy behavior in relationships. So Jonah Hill went through a breakup recently, and this came out that like through that breakup, they, I guess, had a falling off, and there was some texts that his ex shared.
Released to the media, right? She put it out there for the whole world to see.
Yeah. And I think she called him like controlling, right? Or like, our people are saying that he's controlling because of these text messages, I think, right?
Based on the narrative, yeah. Before we go into like what was said in it, what stood out to you about the article? Was it that just what you just mentioned right now?
Yeah, so the reason why it drew me in because I was like, oh dang, like I like Jonah Hill, you know. He had the Studs. I
think it's called Studs. That's that he did a documentary on Netflix, right, where he talked about his journey in therapy. And I think even when we were like putting together the podcast, there were some things that we like visually that were like, we should utilize this in like our podcast, and because it is based around like mental health, and I think that's kind of there's somewhat of, I don't say a catalyst for why we did this, but there were some inspirations in what we saw, right?
Yeah, and I saw that like, you know, there was like this like headline of like Jonah Hill controlling in a relationship, and I was like, wow, like, so it surprised me. So I looked into it, and it said that there was these exchange of messages, and so I was surprised, and I wanted to talk about it because I was like, do people think this is like controlling? Because the text messages that I saw looked very appropriate, I guess. It looked like Jonah was like setting some boundaries with his partner, and I didn't see anything wrong with it initially, and so I wanted to share with you. I was like, hey, do you think this is like, what do you think about this? Like, you know, so
what was my response quickly in the car whenever you sat down and you're like, hey, you want to talk about this? And do you remember like how I responded?
I just remember you kind of like feeling like, oh yeah, like it was like he is controlling. I think you said something like that. Like you were like very much against him, and you didn't say he's controlling, but I kind of felt like we had a different opinion on it.
So my information was like, I think I had read like a number of the text messages, and I had to go back and look at like why I was so defensive in the moment, and I think that I just have something in me that's instilled where when I feel that men are manipulating women, I'm like automatically just to assume that the man is at fault.
Okay. Yeah.
Why I do that?
Where does that come from? Yeah.
It's probably because I am a man, and not to say that like there's not instances out there where women do take advantage of men, but I feel like, you know, what's that song say? It's a man's world and ain't nothing without a woman. It's true, but men are so overpowering and dominating and just there's just really like this sense of where I feel like men for so long have taken advantage of women in so many different ways, like,
Sure.
and maybe because my upbringing has primarily been around women, I just feel like, oh, it's got to be the dude that screwed this up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think about it, there's probably, if you were to look over like 911 calls or whatever, there's probably a lot of times like men being like the aggressors, right, and like the women being the victims, I guess.
And here's to say too, maybe part of me too was like, I mean, I don't know these celebrities that I enjoy so much, their movies, their TV shows, the music that they play, and I guess sometimes when I like somebody, I don't want to think there's anything wrong with them, or like they must be like, because they're funny in this movie, they must be just the best guy ever, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as I hear, as we've heard more in like media in the last few years with like celebrities, things come out and you're just like, oh no, they did what?
Right,
They're that
yeah.
way? Or like, shit, that sucks. Well, like I've seen 20 of that guy's movies, and now I found out he's like, completely inappropriate and like rude and disrespectful. It's kind of a letdown. You're just like, oh man, like another like letdown to somebody that was a legit person, So I think that was probably, so as anyways, to my point was like, I was like, that sucks, but I'm like, dude, why'd you screw up? Maybe, I don't know, I got this defensive thing. But so what I did is, after we had that conversation, I looked at that and I said, hey, let me go back and really read the text messages, and I took a really good look at it. I found this one article, and it talked about how the text exchanges that he had with his ex-girlfriend, her name was Sarah Brady. I guess he was accused of being emotionally abusive, and there was this idea that he was weaponizing therapy talk. And this really stood out to me, because what I saw through the text messages, and she posted a bunch of these text messages, I believe, on her Instagram account, but through Jonah's narrative, I saw him use like words like boundaries. What was the other word that I thought that he was using a lot of? Do you remember what I was saying?
I forget, but it was boundaries. It was.
But he's using all this stuff that we sit there and we.
He sounded coherent. Like he sounded like he was like.
Yeah, his message was very well processed and explained, and this is all through like text messages. But I thought it really stood out to me, the idea of like weaponizing therapy talk.
Yeah.
It's like the idea. Have you ever experienced where somebody will say like, well, Jesse, I'm going to set a boundary with you, or if somebody's saying they're setting boundaries, and you're like, well, I think you're kind of just repeating the word boundary because you think boundary means like you can't cross this line, right? What is a boundary, right? Like, I've put something here. If you cross it, that's my boundary. I refuse to like see it out.
Right.
But
someone's misusing this, and like with Jonah Hill anyway, the article is saying like he's using these words almost to like paint himself in a better picture, and to like, it's almost like say like this is okay for me to do because I'm using these words, and and he's been to therapy and everyone knows that, and so like
it's kind of like people, they cling on to these magic words. I think gaslighting was one of the most popular words I've heard from like in 2022 or 2023. Like people throw out gaslighting all the time, like because it's like this well-known word. Like, you're gaslighting me. And just like, well, I mean, potentially there's always potential of manipulation between people, because I think a lot of times as people, our intent is to get something from somebody, because we're selfish human beings at times. But it doesn't always mean that somebody's like gaslighting you, because to gaslight somebody, as you know, is a very extreme word. So.
The word didn't even come up until recently. Like, it's a newer phrase that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Well,
it's not a newer phrase. It's more popular.
It's a popular phrase.
It's a very trendy phrase now to use. I remember, like, first time. I mean, the gaslighting word is based on a movie from, oh my gosh, I don't know what decade, but 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie was called, I think it would have been called Gaslighting, and they. Basically, this guy the entire time is what is gaslighting is like saying like, you're the crazy one, making somebody feel that they're crazy when they're completely
them.
To make so make them a scapegoat and where they're somewhat sane, right?
I think as I think more about like why I even care about this story is, I think like with my history and my upbringing and my history with relationships, by default kind of conflict averse, where like I don't like to really start conflict naturally, and so I get nervous with starting conflict, and so sometimes I will put my needs aside and not speak up for myself, and I'll regret that, and I'll get resentful about things. And so I think when I saw these messages, to me anyway, and initially it appeared like he was very assertively and in a healthy way saying what he's okay with and what he's not okay with.
Right.
And I think I didn't see much wrong with that, but I know that there's probably some messages I missed, because you said you named you said other things that he was saying.
Went
that,
back,
like,
I read
realize.
like a couple different things where it seemed there was a little more controlling. I think there was something like I think she models, and he's like, there are specific things he was like, I cannot be in a relationship if you continue to do this.
Yeah.
Some things were somewhat, I could see maybe he didn't want, at least in a relationship for himself, but then some things came across as a bit controlling.
Yeah.
Like you can't do this type of job because this is what I want. Now, here's the thing, like if you're like, hey, I don't want to date somebody who's a model, which, oh my gosh, Manny, I've had that problem for years, right? Like back in the day, so all these models wanting to date me, male models. But I was like, okay, it's one thing to be like, I can't date this person because it's like, because it's my ethics, or it's my morals, or my wants and needs or demands, whatever, right? So, but then it's another thing to say, like, there was one text that said, like, you can't hang out with certain friends if they do specific things.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the exact text, even though I have my phone in front of me.
So he's trying to control who she hangs out with.
Yes.
And what she does.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's my take on that. Like, yes, I think it is a controlling aspect to him. Do you think he's do you think it's ridiculous or not okay to have like a part of you that is a little bit I feel like a part of me has some empathy for him, because I'm like, okay, like he's controlling, sure. Aren't all of us a little bit controlling?
Yeah, I mean,
right?
of course I have. I mean, I have some empathy for him because he got put on blast, and I'm not like saying like. Sometimes
I guess where does controlling become toxic? Like, at what point does controlling? Because there's these things like, you can't do this, you can't do that, and I don't know their relationship,
right?
But I guess to me, I'm like, all right, well then I guess we're not compatible.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I think, and I thought that was the aspect that he was coming at. It was like, hey, like this is what I want, what I don't want, and that's why I thought I called it assertive, and he wasn't like, and you're gonna do this whether you like it or not. He was like, and if you can't do that, or if you don't want to do that, like that's perfectly fine.
Right.
Like, I respect you, I still love you. I think he said stuff like that, and so like he would. To me, I was like, okay, I felt like that. There's a healthy aspect to that of like, hey, I'm sorry, but this is kind of what I'm looking for, and maybe that is controlling, but maybe he'll find someone that like doesn't see that as controlling, and he's like, oh yeah, I totally get that. I don't like that either,
Or is this whole idea is that like you initially seemed to think he was okay because what he's doing is he is kind of duping us and manipulating the narrative. Like the fact that he was so prolific with his words and like so like, I just got out of a therapy session. This is how I use this. Like you saw it, maybe I could be wrong, but maybe initially you saw it and you're like, wow, like the way he said that was so well spoken and like all the key phrases and words, and you're just like, this guy's not controlling. This is an excellent breakup right here. I'm not
even impressed by like the words that he used.
Okay, impressed, right.
No, I think I'm impressed with his okayness for the relationship to not work. I think I'm okay. And did you get the feel that that's what it was, like that he was like, hey, like look, if this isn't matching, if this isn't compatible with us, then that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's what I really valued, was like, yes, he was a little controlling. Yes, he was like, maybe, telling, like, it's kind of some jealousy, I guess, insecurity. You can't hang out with guys. You can't do this, right? Obviously, there's some trust issues there, right? Mm-hmm. But the part that I really valued and saw that was maybe really valuable and something to take away for all relationships is this idea of like, I can't control you though. You know what I mean? This is what I want, but I can't make you do it. So if you don't want to do it, like, then maybe we're not compatible. And I just feel like that is the growth aspect to me. It's almost like, that he wasn't like, and screw you, and you're not going to leave me, and you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up, we forgot the idea of like, she posted these, she posted these things on her Instagram, as I said, these text messages, which, whatever. I mean, social media, that's a platform. There's always potential for that, and if you're a public, you're a public figure. So, but the idea of, she made a comment about like, this was best for my mental health.
Yeah,
that's another word on top of the boundary thing. Is that when does that idea of like, I need to take care of my mental health? When does that become like an excuse to do whatever you want?
Yeah. I guess when
like it's a scapegoat as well, in the sense of just like, well, for my mental health, I'm allowed to rob your establishment for all the money that you want.
Release this to the press.
Yeah. Yeah, like, this is cool, right? Because it's for my mental health and it makes me feel good. Like, I'm going to like go shoot out a gun. I'm going to grab a gun and shoot it up in the air because my mental health is like really like troubled right now. And I feel like it's relief for me. Like, when is that? When are we using these words? Once again, we're weaponizing like therapy talk. Like, how are we like, we're taking these words and like changing into something they weren't intended to be.
Yeah, because I think like when you talk about doing things for yourself and your mental health, it doesn't feel like there's supposed to be this like, I'm gonna call someone out in front of everybody, or like, it just feels like very much like a show, like you're putting on a show or you're trying to seek vengeance in some way. And I think it's important to clarify, like, opening up and sharing something because of your mental health, I don't think it has to look this way, right? It doesn't have to look like I'm going to put this person on blast, but it can look like I'm going to talk about this to someone who like is going to hear me out and like help me feel better about this, which I think we're talking about two different experiences with what happened here, right? So, yeah.
Have you ever had an experience where you felt like a client, you're working with somebody, and through the process, like, you are attempting to like work on something with them, and they are completely misinterpreting what you're presenting to them? Like, they've turned it upside down. Have you ever, like, almost in this sense, like, I'm setting a boundary with you as like reference, like, have you ever experienced anything like that through your time and working in the field that comes like to your mind right now?
I think so. There's no situation that comes to mind, but I do remember feeling in a conversation a few times almost like this, damn, like I'm totally screwing up the way I'm saying this, and I think it happens sometimes in my relationship with my wife, or when I talk to my brother about something, or like when I want to get real serious with someone, or like real authentic and honest with someone. I've had that experience of like, oh my gosh, I'm totally saying this the wrong way,
right.
Or it's being taken, and you could tell like someone's face starts to change a little bit. Like they'll give you the like, what are you trying to say? So yeah, I think I've have you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of reference it. I can't think of a specific experience, but once again, the idea of the boundary thing, I want to respect everybody's boundaries, right? Yeah. If somebody has a boundary, like, I'm just not going to allow this anymore. If somebody gives me a boundary, I'm not going to try to break it.
Yeah.
That's something
gotta respect it.
Gotta respect. Do I gotta respect it?
I don't have to
respect it.
No one's gonna make you respect it, but
I don't have to like it either. But I have to
be a good person to respect it.
I have to maybe accept it. I feel like maybe accept it more than anything, because, like I said, I've seen some people say like, I'm using this as a boundary, but to me, sometimes I'm like, well, this is almost an example of just poor communication.
Yeah.
Maybe this is an example as well, as like, he's saying, I'm setting a boundary with you, but he's also in some way, once again, kind of manipulating and controlling. You said the idea of controlling. When is it not? We all control at some level, right?
Yeah.
When is it too much? Is that what you'd mentioned earlier?
I guess. Yeah. Part of me was wondering, like, I feel like I have a controlling aspect to me at times, right? Like, and I've had to work on that. Huh?
Why do you control?
Because I'm insecure.
Okay.
Yeah, like, and I've had to look into that, right? And so I'm a lot better than what I used to be, but yeah, I can control things. Like, I'm actually thinking about it. I'm like done a lot better at letting things go, but there's still controlling parts of me. But yeah, when is it too much? Like, when does it start to go from controlling to like you are sort of like, I don't know, hovering over someone and like executing your power on them without them wanting it, right? Like that, because I feel like that's when it gets unhealthy. That's when things like domestic abuse come up, or like emotional abuse, right? Berating someone over and over again, like that. I feel like there's a line, I guess, right? And it's important to like understand what that line is.
I think for me, when controlling goes out the window, or when it's not, we all want to like be independent, right?
Yeah.
And we all want to like, I don't want to say all, but I'll say like it's important for me to have some type of independence. But I feel like taking control on things I have no control on, that's where it can be. That's where I just I have to like humble myself and accept that, and like maybe in relationships, like, yeah, there's things that I want in my relationship with my significant other, but if that person, if she just is like, no,
Yeah.
then I either pack my shit and bounce.
Yeah.
Or I just go with it. So
What's coming up is how much time do we got left?
we're actually out of time.
Oh shit. Okay.
What's
So
coming
many
up
good
is
things, conversations. Just like, I think this is a topic that comes up sometimes when I see with clients. It's like around sex.
Yeah.
Like, one partner has a different desire than another,
Mhm.
and like this idea of like controlling like the amount of times that you have sex with your partner. Another thing that comes up is my relationship with my daughter, and we can get into that maybe in another show. But like, as kids grow up and they become independent, how do you release control, or like, like how do you not become such a controlling parent as you try to make them develop their independence? So, sorry, counselor, I went over time. Don't charge me a little
That's
extra.
right. As I have to say once again, our time is up this week. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next time.